If your website's not showing up on Google, it can be incredibly frustrating. In this video, I'm going to share some of the most common reasons why your website may not be showing up on Google and what you can do about it. My name is Frank. I'm the founder at SagaPixel. We're an SEO agency that at its core ensures that companies get found online, and making sure that your website is on Google is usually the first step to that. So before we get into the details here, your case is most likely to be one of two situations. Either, indeed, your website is not showing up on Google at all, or it's simply not showing up for the searches that you are performing. These are two very different problems. This video is going to deal primarily with why your website indeed isn't on Google. And we're going to have some other videos that talk about what you can do to get your website to show up for the searches that you're performing. Ultimately, that is the core of what search engine optimization is, getting your website to show up for the queries that you want it to rank for. So the first step is to determine whether indeed your website is not indexed by Google. First thing we're going to do is go to Google, and we're going to perform a site colon search. So we'll type something like site colon and your website. So sagapixel.com. If you see results here, your website is indexed. If I were to put in some sort of nonsensical website, this is the kind of result that you'll see. So what you find is that you type in a site colon, your domain name.com, and it's nothing showing up. That means your website's not indexed by Google. And this video is going to help you to determine why that is. But before we get into that, if your website is showing up there, but it's just not showing up for the searches that you want it to show up for, you should reach out to us. We work with businesses to help them to show up for the queries that they want to rank for, as well as identify other types of searches that they may not even know about that their customers are performing. So let's jump into why your website isn't showing up on Google. The first and most likely reason is that Google simply hasn't indexed your website. This is often the case when you have a brand new website. It takes some time for Google to crawl the web, find your website, crawl it, put it into its index, figure out what it's relevant to, and then start delivering that website for relevant queries. One way to expedite that process is to submit your sitemap to Google. You can do that through Google Search Console. Below this video, we'll link to an article that walks you through the process of submitting your sitemap to Google. And if you're on our website, you'll see it in the section right below this video. The second most likely scenario is that you've blocked Googlebot from crawling your website. This sometimes happens with new websites that went under development. The developer may have checked a box to prevent your website from showing up in search before it was finished, and then they forgot to uncheck it. So determining whether this is the case or not can be a little technical, and you're probably going to need some SEO tools to determine it. So I would recommend that you find a trusted SEO. Another possible reason is that you may have incurred a penalty of some sort. If your website used to be in search and now it's no longer in search, there's a chance that you may have incurred some sort of penalty. If Google thinks that your website is doing something that it shouldn't be doing, sometimes maybe if it's hacked, it will completely remove you from the index. You can determine whether you've incurred a manual penalty by logging into Search Console, scrolling down to the Security and Manual Actions section, clicking on Manual Actions, and seeing if anything pops up over here. If you've done something to get yourself in trouble, it'll show up right there. If your website has suffered any sort of hack, you can click on the Security Issues part, and the same thing will show up there. So between either one of those, you'll be able to see whether you've been hacked or whether you had a manual action. You won't be able to see if you've incurred any sort of algorithmic penalty, which very seldom is going to completely remove you from Google search. If you did a site colon search and your website didn't show up, that's not an algorithmic penalty. There's something else going on, and you should talk to an experienced SEO about it. Another reason why your website may not be showing up on Google is that you may have some sort of technical issue that's preventing Google from crawling your website. If they can't crawl it, they can't index it. And if your website's not indexed, it's not going to show up on Google. So to wrap up, there can be a lot of causes for your website not showing up on Google, be it for a specific query that you're hoping to rank for, or that indeed your website is not on Google at all. And you usually need to talk to somebody that's experienced with dealing with these sorts of issues. This is something that an experienced SEO will be able to get to the bottom of if you're not able to do it yourself.